The biometric vault screamed once, and every armed man in the dining room reached beneath his jacket. I froze beside the shattered champagne glass at my feet, one hand wrapped around a linen cloth, while a red warning flooded the vault's black display. Permanent lockdown. 3 failed attempts will erase all stored data. The crystal chandeliers cast hard white light across polished mahogany, silver cuff links, and faces that had forgotten how to blink. Behind the 12-foot table, Adrian stood motionless before the steel door built into the wall. The contracts waiting for his signature represented a fragile agreement among the city's most powerful families. But the encrypted ledger inside that vault mattered more. It held payment records, names, dates, and the evidence proving Adrian had not ordered the betrayal for which several capos wanted him punished. Without it, the alliance would collapse before midnight, and Adrian might not survive the accusation. "Nobody touches that panel," he said. His voice was quiet enough to make the ventilation hum seem loud. One of the capos lowered the hand he had been extending toward the scanner. Across the room, Victor Hale, Adrian's senior advisor, stared at the warning with his jaw clenched. "It could be a temporary authentication error." "Could be?" Adrian asked. Victor's expensive leather shoes stopped against the marble floor. The room smelled of spilled champagne, cigar smoke, and the faint metallic heat rising from the vault's biometric reader. "We'll bring in specialists," Victor said. Adrian glanced at the sealed windows, then at the men positioned near both exits. "Lock down the estate." Heavy bolts struck their housings throughout the mansion. The sound traveled down the corridor one door at a time, deep, mechanical blows that seemed to tighten the air around my ribs. Outside, engines started beneath the portico. Guards swept the grounds while electronic shutters descended over the glass with a low grinding vibration. No guest was allowed to leave. No employee could use a phone. Every wireless signal was cut. Adrian had lost control of the one object that could preserve his authority, so he seized control of everything surrounding it. I crouched and began collecting the broken glass. A jagged shard pressed through the cloth, cold against my palm, while black trouser legs and polished shoes moved around me as if I were part of the floor. No one asked whether I had been close enough to see what happened. No one looked down when I carried the fragments toward the service tray. I was Nia, the maid who refilled their glasses, removed their stains, and disappeared before private conversations began. That night, invisibility kept me inside the room. Adrian approached the vault again but stopped several feet from it. Red light sharpened the planes of his face. "How long until the first technician arrives?" 9 minutes, Victor answered. "The others within 20. A capo struck the table with his ring. "And if they cannot open it?" Adrian turned toward him. The man's chair creaked, but he said nothing more. I reached for the last sliver beneath the console beside the vault. From that close, I heard a faint click behind the steel panel. Then another. The sound came a third time, separated by an interval too precise to belong to cooling metal. I kept my eyes lowered and placed the shard on my tray. Beyond the locked doors, tires hissed over the gravel as the first expert arrived. Inside, the display still promised 3 chances before the truth vanished forever, and beneath its warning, something kept clicking in the dark. Cold air rolled through the open front doors, carrying rain, engine heat, and the bitter smell of wet wool. A silver equipment case crossed the marble floor in the hands of a gray-haired vault specialist while 2 guards searched him beneath the chandelier's hard white glow. I moved behind them with fresh coffee, listening as the faint clicking inside the steel wall continued beneath the scrape of shoes and quiet handling of weapons. The specialist pressed a stethoscope-like sensor against the vault, studied its waveform, then attached a bypass module to the diagnostic port. "The locking bolts are intact," he said. "This is an authentication fault." Victor Hale gave Adrian a measured nod, as if the diagnosis confirmed his own judgment. "Then clear it." The specialist entered a maintenance sequence. Amber symbols crawled across the display. For one breath, nothing happened. Then a digital clock appeared beneath the red warning, 10 o'clock. It began counting down. The specialist pulled his hand back. That should not have activated. Adrian removed the module himself and placed it on the mahogany table. The small decision changed the room. No one would touch the vault again without his permission. The software engineer arrived 6 minutes later, rain shining on her black coat. She knelt beside the console, connected an isolated laptop, and built a sealed bridge to read the vault's internal logs without opening them. Blue code washed over her glasses. The room warmed with bodies and electronics, the air smelled of coffee, damp leather, and overheated plastic. At 8:41, she found a corrupted identity packet and attempted to quarantine it. The vault rejected the command. The red digits jumped to 6 o'clock. Disconnect, Adrian said. She obeyed immediately, but the countdown kept moving. At 5:32, the security consultant took her place. He dusted the scanner, examined the thermal reader, and tested the biometric plate with a calibration film. The hardware is receiving 2 signals, he said. I can force it to choose the registered one. Can you guarantee the data? Adrian asked. The consultant's mouth remained open for half a second too long. No, then you touch nothing. I poured coffee for the copos as the clock fell through 5 minutes. Porcelain clicked against saucers. A gold watch tapped impatiently on the table. Beneath those sharper sounds, the vault answered in its own pattern. Click. Click. A pause. Click. Each cycle arrived at precisely the same interval, but the second click landed slightly late, like a second pair of footsteps trying to match the first. The specialists argued over corrupted software, damaged relays, and failed authentication. None of them listened to the machine between their sentences. I did. I set Victor's cup beside his hand and crossed closer under the pretense of wiping a coffee ring from the console. The scanner's surface held a faint brown crescent left by someone's cup. Behind the panel came the pattern again, one clean response, one delayed response, then rejection. Not a dead mechanism. Not random corruption. 2 answers entering where the vault expected 1. The countdown reached 3 o'clock. Its red light pulsed across Adrian's face and painted every gun barrel in the room the color of an open wound. 3 experts stood surrounded by expensive equipment, yet no one offered another solution. I folded the cloth once and kept it between my fingers. Adrian looked from the silent specialists to the shrinking clock. Does anyone in this room know what that sound means? No one answered. The late click came again. This time I raised my eyes. I do. Victor slowly turned toward me as the clock slipped to 2:47. The late click landed beneath the vault's steady electronic hum, sharp as a fingernail tapping glass. Red light washed across the mahogany walls while the air conditioning breathed cold against my damp collar. Victor Hale looked first at the folded cloth in my hand, then at my black uniform, as if both belonged beneath his notice. You do? His voice carried easily over the long table. Our engineers can't explain it, but the maid can? A few capos shifted in their leather chairs. One released a dry, humorless laugh. The sound cut deeper than an insult because it invited the room to join him. I placed the cloth beside the coffee tray. My fingers wanted to close around its edge, but I kept them flat. They're trying to repair the wrong problem. Victor's smile thinned. The countdown glowed behind him, 2:34. Careful, he said. You're just a maid. Confusing overheard words with expertise could erase the only evidence keeping your employer alive. The security consultant lowered his eyes toward his equipment. The software engineer stared at the floor. No one defended me, and Adrian remained motionless beside the vault, one hand resting near the steel console. His silence made Victor bolder. Return to the kitchen, Mia. I did not move. That was the boundary I crossed, not the distance between the tray and the vault, but the invisible line that men like Victor expected women like me never to touch. The system isn't broken, I said. It's refusing contradictory data. Victor turned toward the capos with an open palm. There. A phrase stolen from the engineer, polished for the room. No, my voice came out low, yet the marble floor carried it. He said the identity packet was corrupted. Corruption produces irregular errors. This rejection is repeating at the same interval. I pointed without approaching the machine. The first click is the scanner accepting a response. The second arrives late. Then the vault rejects both. The timer slipped to 2:12. Victor's jaw tightened. A relay can echo. An echo repeats one answer, I said. This gives two. A chair creaked. Beyond the sealed windows, rain traced silver lines through the garden lights. Inside, the smell of burned coffee mingled with warm circuitry and gun oil. Victor stepped between me and the vault. And now she diagnoses biometric architecture by sound. Enough. Adrian did not raise his voice. He did not defend my place in the room or rebuke the insult. He simply lifted two fingers, and every whisper stopped. Even Victor's polished shoe froze against the carpet. Adrian's gaze settled on me with the cold precision he had used to halt the consultant's drill. No one speaks unless I ask. The balance of the room shifted. The specialists no longer faced the vault. The capos no longer watched Adrian. Every eye turned toward the maid Victor had ordered away. Adrian moved one step aside, clearing my view of the console without granting me access to it. You said contradictory data, he said. Tell me exactly what you saw. My attention went to the brown crescent on the scanner, the pulsing indicator beneath it, and the tiny delay between the two internal responses. I could feel Victor watching my mouth, waiting for one uncertain word he could crush. Not saw, I said. Heard. The second click sounded again. This time, Adrian heard the difference. His eyes shifted toward the steel panel. The countdown reached 1:58. Then explain the sound, he ordered, and tell me how long you need to prove it. 60 seconds, I said. The number cut through the low electrical hum as the countdown rolled to 1:54. Cold air spilled from the ceiling vents, carrying the bitter smell of coffee and overheated circuitry across the marble floor. I kept my hands away from the console. I need one uninterrupted minute and the final access attempt. The vault specialist stared at me as if I had asked to burn his credentials. There is no safe final attempt, he said. That's the point, I replied. The system accepts the first response. The second response contradicts it. If I can isolate the conflict before rejection, the lock should release. The software engineer shook his head. Blue light from his monitor sharpened the sweat along his temple. Should? Victor seized the word immediately. That is what we are trusting now. A maid's guess? Adrian did not look at him. His attention remained on me, still and heavy. What happens if you're wrong? The last attempt is consumed, I said. The ledger erases itself. Leather creaked around the table as the capos shifted. One man removed his cigar from his mouth without exhaling. Another looked from the vault to Adrian, measuring more than the remaining time. These men had entered the mansion expecting proof that Adrian had not betrayed them. Now that proof hung on a judgment none of his advisors had recommended. Adrian stepped toward the specialists. Can any of you open it before that clock reaches 0? No one answered. The security consultant lowered his drill case. The vault expert watched the red digits fall to 131. The software engineer closed his laptop halfway, then stopped, unwilling to make the silence look like surrender. Victor moved beside Adrian, his polished shoes clicking against the marble. If you authorize this, every man here will know you rejected trained counsel for household staff. The words carried farther than his voice. A capo at the end of the table folded his hands over his gold rings. And if she destroys the evidence? He asked. Then we leave with the accusation unanswered. Warm wax ran down the black candles, filling the room with the faint scent of smoke. Adrian finally turned from me and faced the table. He did not raise his voice. You brought experts into my house, he said. They started that clock. They shortened it. And now they have no answer. The vault specialist opened his mouth. Adrian lifted one finger, and the man stopped. This is not about her uniform. It is about whether anyone in this room heard what she heard. His gaze crossed each specialist in turn. None claimed they had. The countdown reached 112. Adrian removed the signet ring from his right hand. Its dark stone struck the mahogany table with a hard, solitary knock. Among these men, that ring carried the weight of his command. Setting it down meant his decision could no longer be disguised as an experiment ordered by an advisor. It belonged to him alone. If the evidence disappears, Adrian said to the capos, the failure is mine. Not hers. A murmur moved around the table, low and dangerous. Victor's jaw tightened. Adrian had not merely given me permission, he had placed his authority beneath the outcome. One failed minute could cost him the last proof of his innocence. This choice could cost him the room. The red display changed to 1 o'clock. Adrian crossed to the console and pressed his palm against the authorization plate. A green line passed beneath his skin, followed by the heavy internal clunk of the final access lock disengaging. He stepped back, leaving the illuminated panel open before me. The specialists were no longer in control. Neither was Victor. Adrian met my eyes across the cold steel. The minute is yours. The red digits cast a thin glow across the black marble floor, while somewhere inside the vault, a relay clicked twice, one crisp note, then its faint metallic echo. The room smelled of hot circuitry, bitter coffee, and the cold night air trapped behind sealed windows. I moved toward the illuminated console. Victor stepped into my path. His polished shoes stopped inches from the broken champagne glass I had not finished clearing. Understand this, he said, keeping his voice low enough to sound private and loud enough for every capo to hear. When that ledger disappears, they will remember whose hands were on the machine. He glanced at Adrian's signet ring on the table. A man in his position can survive one reckless order. A maid cannot survive the blame. The threat did not come from a raised voice. It came from the certainty with which he described my ruin, as though my name had already been written beneath the failure. I looked past him at the armed men lining the room. Their jackets concealed pistols, but not impatience. If the evidence vanished, Adrian would be branded a traitor before dawn. By sunrise, men loyal to rival families would begin settling accounts in apartment hallways, restaurants, and homes where children knew nothing about ledgers or power. That was why I had spoken. Not to embarrass 3 experts. Not to make powerful men learn my name. Move, I told Victor. His smile stiffened. For one suspended second, nobody breathed loudly enough to disturb the hum of the equipment. Then I walked around him and placed both palms on the steel work table. Its surface was so cold that the chill climbed into my wrists. Cables ran from the specialist's computers to the vault's service ports. A wireless diagnostic hub blinked beside the scanner. 2 maintenance transmitters rested behind it, their green lights pulsing at different speeds. Every device in the room could send another instruction. Any one of them could interfere with the final response. Nobody touches a keyboard from this moment forward, I said. The software engineer withdrew his fingers. The vault specialist stared at Adrian, waiting for him to overrule me. Victor did not. His hand remained near the wireless hub. I turned to Adrian. Permission is not enough. I need you to disconnect every remote control device yourself. A murmur broke across the capos. Cutting the equipment would leave no specialist able to intervene, no advisor able to stop me, and no machine available to reverse whatever happened next. Adrian studied the cables, then my face. The red light sharpened the planes of his expression. All of them? All of them. Once they are disconnected, you will be alone with the final attempt. That is the point. Victor's composure cracked. Adrian, if she locks us out, we lose even the chance to preserve a fragment. There is no chance left in what you control, Adrian said. He crossed the room before Victor could answer. One by one, he pulled the network leads from the laptops. Plastic clips snapped in the silence. He shut down the wireless hub, removed its battery, and unplugged both maintenance transmitters from the vault. The specialist's screens went dark, washing their faces in sudden gray. Victor reached for the final cable. Adrian caught it first. Their eyes met over the braided wire. Then Adrian tore it free and laid it beside his ring. The vault stood isolated. No advisor could redirect it. No expert could interrupt me. No one could hide behind the equipment if I failed. Adrian stepped away from the console, surrendering the last physical measure of control. "You have what you asked for." I slipped off my maid's gloves and set them beside the disconnected cables. The steel panel vibrated beneath my fingertips, and the double click sounded again, closer now, naked without the surrounding machines. I looked at the frozen display and drew one slow breath. "Start the 60 seconds. Adrian pressed the timer. The first red digit vanished. Victor's warning was no longer the danger. The danger was that I had just made sure no one in the room could save the evidence from me. A hard metallic tick cut through the warm, coffee-scented air. 58 seconds remained. I pressed 2 fingers against the scanner, not to enter a code, but to feel the vibration under its cold glass. The relay answered once beneath my hand. Then came the second click, softer and late, like an echo trapped behind steel. "Don't touch anything," I said. Adrian moved first, blocking Victor with one outstretched arm. The capos remained beneath the amber chandelier, their faces motionless, their guns dark against tailored jackets. 51 seconds. A crescent of dried coffee stained the lower edge of the scanner. I traced it with my fingernail. The mark stopped at a hairline seam that did not belong to the manufacturer's frame. Someone had wiped the glass after the spill, but moisture had been drawn beneath that seam, outlining a second plate no larger than a postage stamp. "The coffee didn't damage it," I said. "It showed me what was added." 43 seconds. I looked toward the mantel clock, remembering the exact moment the lights had flickered earlier that evening. The main scanner had gone silent during the outage. The delayed click had not. Whatever produced the second response carried its own power. I slid a silver dessert knife beneath the false plate. Victor took one step forward. Adrian caught his shoulder and forced him back without looking away from me. "Let her work." The knife lifted the edge. Hot plastic and sharp ozone escaped through the opening. Behind it, a tiny unauthorized sensor pulsed green, feeding a second identity into every scan. 32 seconds. There was no time to remove it cleanly. 2 wires ran into the vault housing, and cutting either one could trigger the erasure circuit. I needed to drain its signal without breaking the line. My wrist felt suddenly bare beneath the chandelier's heat. The narrow metal bracelet there had belonged to my mother. Its surface was worn smooth where her thumb had rubbed it through years of double shifts and overdue bills. It was the last thing of hers I could still hold. 24 seconds. Adrian's gaze dropped to the bracelet as I opened its tiny clasp. He understood before I spoke. "Nia, find another way." "There isn't one." I threaded the bracelet between the false sensor's exposed contact and the grounded steel frame. The metal trembled against my fingertips. A blue spark snapped. Heat bit into my skin, and the bracelet's engraved edge blackened instantly. 17 seconds. The false sensor kept blinking. I tightened the loop with the dessert knife. The bracelet warped, its delicate links fusing into a crooked silver bridge. The delayed relay click stuttered. Once. Twice. Then stopped. 9 seconds. The scanner's red light changed to white, but the locking bolts remained buried inside the door. I held the ruined bracelet against the contact while Adrian watched the timer consume the final digits. 3. The smell of scorched silver spread through the silent room. 2. Somewhere inside the vault, a motor awakened. 1. The countdown vanished, and for one breath, the steel door gave no answer at all. Then a deep mechanical impact rolled through the floor, and the first locking bolt began to withdraw. Before relief could reach anyone's face, the console flashed a new message in stark white letters: unauthorized identity source isolated. Displaying origin record. Victor stopped breathing behind Adrian. White light spilled across the vault's black steel, cold and flat as winter moonlight. Beneath it, the ruined links of my mother's bracelet smoked against the contact plate, filling the air with the bitter smell of scorched silver. A second bolt withdrew. Then a third. Each impact traveled through the marble floor and into my knees. I pulled the dessert knife away, and the twisted bracelet dropped into my palm, hot enough to sting. Across the console, a thin progress bar reached its end. Origin record recovered. The vault door released with a compressed hiss, breathing refrigerated air into the warm library. No one moved. Adrian stood between Victor and the open door, one hand resting beside the pistol under his jacket, while the screen populated with dates, access codes, and biometric signatures. Victor's face appeared first. Not a photograph. A verified identity record. His name followed in clean white letters: Victor Hale, Senior Security Authorization. Someone near the mahogany table whispered a curse. The sound died beneath the console's next alert. Duplicate sensor installed, 11:43 p.m. remote wipe scheduled upon final rejection. Victor's shoes scraped the marble. He turned toward the side entrance, but Adrian shifted once and blocked it. No weapon left his coat. None had to. Stay, Adrian said. The word landed softer than the vault bolts and carried farther. Victor's gaze flicked toward the capos, searching faces that had obeyed him for years. Chairs remained still. Rings stopped tapping against crystal glasses. Even the fireplace seemed to shrink, its cedar smoke trapped beneath the chandelier's pale glow. I set the warped bracelet on the table and reached into the vault. The ledger lay beneath a stack of sealed documents, its leather cover cool and pebbled under my fingertips. When I placed it before Adrian, the recovered log opened automatically to Victor's outgoing transmissions. Payment schedules. Meeting locations. Names of Adrian's people marked for removal after the evidence disappeared. The room had spent an hour doubting my ears. Now every man in it was reading the proof they had nearly allowed Victor to erase. It's fabricated, Victor said, but his voice cracked on the last syllable. Adrian did not look at him. He turned one page, then another, the paper rasping beneath his signet ring. The vault authenticated your installation code, he said. And recorded your remote command. Victor stepped forward anyway. Adrian closed the ledger. The slap of leather against paper made 3 bodyguards move at once, sealing every exit without drawing blood or raising their voices. Power changed hands in that single sound. Victor stopped beside the chair from which he had mocked me. His mouth opened, but Adrian finally raised his eyes. You were willing to bury innocent families to hide what you sold. Victor's shoulders lowered beneath his tailored jacket. Around him, the same capos who had laughed when he called me a maid now studied the floor, the open vault, anything except my face. One of the experts quietly removed his glasses. Another pushed his untouched coffee away, leaving a dark ring on the polished wood, the ordinary mark that had helped expose what their machines could not. Adrian lifted my ruined bracelet with both hands. He examined the fused links, then placed them beside his signet ring rather than returning them to a servant's tray. Nia saved the ledger, he said. Victor tried to destroy it. His gaze swept the table until every head rose. No one in this room will confuse rank with worth again. Then he faced Victor, and the cold air from the open vault moved between them. You advised me on how betrayal should be judged, Adrian said. Now you will stand here while I decide whether I still obey those rules. Victor went pale. The room had its traitor, its evidence, and its witness. What it did not yet have was Adrian's verdict. The soft hum of the open vault filled the room, steady beneath the faint crackle of the fire. Cold air carried the bitter smell of untouched coffee across the mahogany table, where Adrian's signet ring rested beside the blackened remains of my mother's bracelet. Victor watched the armed men by the doors, then adjusted his cuffs as though dignity could still be pressed back into place. "You know the law," he said. "Betrayal is answered before dawn." Adrian looked at the preserved ledger in my hands. I had expected him to choose between punishment and mercy. Instead, he turned to me. "What happens to the families named there if I follow our law?" Every face shifted toward the maid they had dismissed minutes earlier. I opened the ledger. Its pages felt cool and stiff beneath my fingertips. "The guilty men disappear," I said. "Then their crews blame one another. Their wives lose their homes. Their children inherit enemies they never made. By tomorrow night, this evidence saves you and condemns everyone near them." A chair creaked. One capo lowered his gaze. Victor gave a thin laugh. "Now the servant advises us on governance?" This time Adrian did not silence him with a glance. He walked to the head of the table, picked up his signet ring, and pressed it into the flame of a candle. Gold flashed orange. The room filled with the sharp scent of heated metal. That ring authenticated every private judgment made under his authority. Without it, no order could be carried out in his name. "For 12 years, Adrian said, this seal made fear look like order." He lifted the ring with a folded linen napkin and set it on the stone floor. Then he brought his heel down. The setting cracked. The engraved face bent against the marble with a brittle snap that sounded louder than gunfire. Victor's composure broke first. "If you abandon the code now, every family at this table will call you weak." Adrian faced the capos. "Then let them call me weak to my face." He ordered the guards to lower their weapons and place Victor in a locked guest suite, alive, unhurt, and watched. No sentence would be issued before every name in the ledger had been separated into the guilty, the coerced, and the innocent. Assets meant for retaliation would be frozen instead. Families would not answer for crimes they had not committed. Victor stepped forward. "You cannot rule this world without its rules." Adrian blocked him with one open hand, not a fist. "Then I will lose the world before I let it decide what kind of man I must remain." The guards escorted Victor away. His shoes struck the marble and clipped, hollow beats until a distant lock turned. Adrian had not merely spared a traitor for the night. He had broken the mechanism that allowed obedience to masquerade as justice, and the cost was visible in the capos' rigid shoulders and unreadable eyes. He returned to the table and slid the ruined signet beside my burned bracelet. One symbol had been sacrificed to save evidence. The other had been destroyed to change what would be done with it. "Nia," he said, while the first gray light of morning touched the windows, "you saw the lie inside that machine when every expert saw only failure. Now tell me what you see inside this room." No one moved. The power to answer no longer belonged to the men who had entered with guns. Adrian had placed the future of his rule before the woman they once refused to hear, and this time, he was waiting for her judgment. Dawn pressed a pale blade of light across the marble table, catching on my scorched bracelet and the jagged remains of Adrian's signet ring. The air smelled of cold coffee, burned metal, and the rain clinging to the capos' wool coats. Somewhere beyond the sealed doors, Victor's lock clicked once, then held. I looked around the room they had asked me to judge. The experts kept their hands folded. The capos watched Adrian, waiting for him to reclaim the authority he had placed before me. I lifted the preserved ledger from the table. Its leather cover felt warm from the vault, its pages carrying the names of men who had chosen betrayal beside those of families who had chosen nothing. "No one leaves innocent," I said. A chair creaked. "Some of you laughed because it was safer than questioning Victor. Some stayed silent because his approval protected your position. And some trusted expensive credentials more than the evidence in front of you." I turned toward the specialists. "You failed because you tried to conquer the machine. You never listened to it." Then I faced Adrian. "And you failed before they did. You built a room where truth needed permission to speak." The words landed without the cover of gunfire or raised voices. Adrian's fingers closed around the ruined ring, but he did not defend himself. "What do you require?" he asked. "Not an apology. I opened the ledger and placed it beneath the gray morning light. A process no single man can control. Every accusation must be supported by evidence. Every coerced person must be heard. Every innocent family must be protected from debts and punishments they never chose. Victor receives a review, not a private sentence. And the people who clean your floors, serve your meals, and stand unnoticed in your rooms are allowed to report what they see without asking rank for permission. One capo pushed back from the table. You expect us to submit our decisions to a maid? Adrian looked at me, but this judgment was mine. I removed my white service apron, folded it once, and laid it beside the ledger. No, I said. You will submit them to facts. If that humiliates you, the problem is not my uniform. The capo's chair settled slowly onto the marble. Adrian crossed to the vault console and entered a command. A low mechanical tone rolled through the room as access privileges vanished one by one, his own first, then those of every advisor and capo. He handed me the only printed copy of the new review order. No title accompanied it. No promise of wealth disguised what it cost him. By noon, Victor remained confined and unharmed, retaliatory accounts were frozen, the coerced names had been separated from the guilty, and armed teams ordered toward innocent homes had been recalled. The experts departed beneath lowered umbrellas, carrying cases that suddenly looked heavier than when they arrived. Before I left the room, Adrian placed the burned bracelet in my palm. A jeweler could have restored its shape, but I closed my fingers around the blackened curve. Leave it, I told him. I want to remember what saving the truth cost. He nodded toward my folded apron. And that? I picked it up. I earned my living in this. There is no shame in honest work. Then I placed the review order on top of it and walked with him into the brightening hall, not behind him, and not beneath his notice. In 60 seconds, I had opened his vault. By listening afterward, Adrian opened something harder, the clenched fist of power, and that morning, the world remembered what dignity looks like.